Hi, and welcome to Marital Values. My name is Samantha Irabor. Struggling with infertility in marriage could be painful, very hard, and frustrating, and it can put a lot of stress on any marriage, which is why I am very, very humbled to be interviewing this couple today who's going through the struggle right now to help us understand and give us the advice on how best to deal with it. Welcome, Sean and Christina Burnett.
Thank you.
I am so happy, I'm so happy that you agreed to do this. You have no idea. Because I know how tough it can be in people when people don't want to talk about things like that.
Sure.
So I really appreciate you coming. So the first question I want to ask, there's a lot of questions I want to ask, so I have to print this out so I will not forget.
Okay.
So how long has it been since you've been trying for a child?
Well, we've been trying since we got married, and we got married June 21st, 2013. Was it 13? 14. Sorry, 2014. So we just had a 5-year anniversary. We had a 5-year anniversary. So
congratulations.
Thank you. We've been trying for 5 years. We did get pregnant once last year, and then we had a miscarriage.
Yeah,
so,
I know about that.
Yeah. So we've been trying all together for 5 years.
Wow. Okay, before I ask you the other question, what do you do? Tell us a little bit about Christian and
yeah, absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about him.
I work for a group called the Family Institute of Connecticut, so the pro-life, pro-family organization. They're in Hartford, Connecticut, and we work for to support legislation that helps families and to oppose legislation that hurts families. So we oppose attacks on pro-life pregnancy resource centers and recreational marijuana and things like that. And then we support initiatives that would help, grow and prosper the family. So I do that, and then I also travel and speak as a pro-life activist or advocate. I speak for pregnancy center banquets and things like that. And then also I do ministry through my church, Shiloh Christian Church in Middletown.
Okay, awesome. I like it. Thanks. I must say I've seen a lot of your work. I follow you, I know your work, and I cannot tell you how proud I am to see you out there fighting for these women, fighting for this baby. Not a lot of people understand.
Yeah.
But I do, and I appreciate that you would do that for our community. I just want to put that out there.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Sean.
Yes, I'm a sales manager for a managed IT service provider based in Portland, Connecticut.
Okay.
And that's what I do full time. And then also I'm the chairman of the board of directors for a private Christian school, K through 8th grade. And also I'm a financial advisor for a youth ministry called New Generation.
Okay.
And also along with Christina, I serve at Shiloh Christian Church as a young adult minister.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I know it's 5 years your anniversary.
Yeah.
So when you started trying for a child, when did you know? Because I have 3 boys, praise God. I knew there was a time when we're actively trying. And for you, when did you know that this has become a problem?
Well, I think it was definitely after a year, because they say that after a year, if nothing's happened, then you should go to the doctor. Now, I did get married later. I was single all my 20s, and I was waiting on the Lord to get married. So I did get married. I think I was 32 when I got married. And so obviously, American standards, when it comes to medicine, and they say that around 35, after 35, you become high risk if you're trying to get pregnant. So I already knew, going into it that I wasn't, I wasn't 35 yet, but I was only a few years away from that. But after a year, I started to think that there may be something wrong. But I also grew up with having really horrible menstrual cycles. So even on our honeymoon, I had to go to the hospital. Thankfully, I didn't actually go in. He drove me to the hospital on our honeymoon, but then by the time we got there, I had settled down. But for years growing up, I would have to go to the hospital because I would have really bad menstrual cycles, and I'd be in extreme pain and growing up and really, really sick. But I'd gone to the doctor multiple times and even to the emergency room, and they never told me anything was wrong. Now, I ended up figuring out that later on, through this journey, that I had endometriosis and that I had fibroids. And so I was able to get surgery for that. But I didn't know that. So if I had known that, I think going into marriage, it would have been different. But I didn't know.
Okay. How has this experience been for you so far? for both of you, I mean,
Yeah.
even though you're the one who has gone through that, and did you have surgery? I know you told me you had surgery at one point.
Yeah, I had surgery. Yeah.
And how has it been for you, knowing that you really are trying for a child, and you know you guys are going through this? How has it been, particularly from a man's perspective now? A lot of people will hear about women's perspective, but men don't usually speak up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be difficult just not having an answer, you know, or worse yet, thinking you have an answer, going through surgery, complicated medical procedures, or, you know, being put through a lot of different tests, and, you know, okay, we think this may be the key to it, and then that's not the key, or that's not the answer, and feeling kind of very limited in terms of what I can physically do. Of course, there's a lot of prayer, and just, you know, going along with trying to stick with whatever the doctors have advised to do, or, you know, there's just so many things out there that you can try, or you know, so many different methods that you know, people say can help a situation like this one, and you just not knowing which one, and most of them are very expensive. So it's like you're trying different things, and it, you know, it can be just tough for, you know, the practical side, because I maintain a lot of the practical things. You know, it's practically it can be tough, but also just emotionally it can be tough. Just, you know, watching you know, her reaction to everything and feeling helpless.
What would you say has been the toughest period throughout this 5 years, and knowing that this is a problem that you're struggling with? I know some days you're like, okay, God, I give it to you, and other days you're definitely like, you're into yourself. What would you say has been that toughest period for you?
I mean, I think the two hardest things were, one, this, you know, surgery, and then recovery after the surgery, because I was home for at least 2 weeks, if not 3. I remember one day I tried to get up and go to church, and I just physically wasn't ready, and I broke down crying walking into church, because I was just, my body was so exhausted, and I was, you know, recovering from that. And, you know, surgery in itself was scary, because of course you have to sign papers, and you don't know, anything could go wrong, you could die, and that's a risk. And so I had to trust the Lord with that. But that actually turned out really well. Since my surgery, I have, my pain's been drastically reduced. Most months I don't even take pain meds when I have my period. So, so the surgery was very positive. Then I think the hardest thing of all was, you know, losing a child through miscarriage. That was very difficult. And I think the hardest part of that was, well, there's, I mean, I don't know exactly what was the hardest part, but one of the most difficult parts was just the waiting period, because they had said, well, we don't see a heartbeat, we don't hear a heartbeat. But then we'd come, and that was after we had, they thought something was wrong, then we went away for like a week, then we came back and there was a heartbeat, and then we went away again, and we came back like a week or 2 later, and then it was gone. And so it was like that up and down roller coaster was just really emotionally exhausting. We were having everybody, you know, pray for us, all my friends who are prayer warriors, and all you could do is just wait. I mean, like Sean said, it's just the uncertainty of you're just waiting to see what happens. And I worked for 4 years with women who were making decisions about their pregnancy. So I worked with women who were perfectly healthy, having perfectly healthy pregnancies, and they would just say, I don't want the baby. And they would, you know, decide we were a pro-life center, so we didn't do abortions, but they would leave and go get an abortion, or they would choose adoption. And sometimes you would see, you know, teenagers get pregnant, or women that had multiple kids but they weren't taking care of the children that they had. You know, you just see a lot of really difficult situations. And so emotionally and mentally you wonder, how is it that people can be having children all the time and then disposing of their children? And then, you know, we want children and we're not able to have them. But again, the uncertainty, you know, there's no real answers to any of those things. You just have to trust God, because there's not a clear-cut answer. The Bible doesn't say this is why this person gets blessed and you don't. I mean, the Bible says that children are a reward. But some people get children that, you know, you would think are not deserving of a reward. But, you know, the rain falls on the just and the unjust. And just have to remember through the whole process that God is good. But those are probably the most difficult times. I know probably for you too as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think a very difficult time was when we found out that she was pregnant, but there was complications. And where it can be really difficult is, wanting to believe that God is going to do it. Like, I know there was a period where we were definitely not on the same page.
Yeah.
And it was very hard for me because I was really wanting to believe that God was going to do it, a miracle. And I think she was struggling with that. And I had to kind of go outside to other friends that, hey, can I just pray and believe with you until, it's amazing how God can work, through an outside source.
Yes.
So someone came outside and encouraged her while somebody outside was encouraging me, and then together we came back at the end of the night and said, all right, we're going to believe together that God can do this. And it was literally like, that's how it happened. Like, it was almost like a whole day had gone by where we're both talking to other people about this and praying with other people, but by the time I got home that night, making the decision that we're going to believe that God can do it.
Yes.
And but it was tough because it was a roller coaster. Like she said, there was the doctor in the first appointment said that there was a less than 1% chance that this baby is going to thrive. And then but we had a lot of people praying, like she said, and then when we came back to do the ultrasound, the doctor couldn't believe the baby had a heartbeat. And it was a miracle. The doctor even looked and he says, I can't believe this. And but there's a heartbeat. And so he said, I guess I was wrong. I mean, but it was just, that roller coaster of possibility, is very difficult. Every stage of it is, can you conceive? And then will the baby live? And, all of those things, I think can be very challenging, and each of us have a different perspective throughout each of those phases.
And you can definitely see that God's ways, it's never man's way. And sometimes we don't understand what he does, or he just does them anyway. And like you said, we just have to keep trusting him. And one thing that I've learned about both of you so far is that you have that support system. Not everybody has that.
Yeah.
It's good to know that you can call someone and say, can I believe with you? And you can have someone who would encourage you. There's not a lot of couples that have that. And I can imagine how they will be struggling and how painful that particular moment will be for them, knowing that they don't have anybody they would share it with. So it's good that you have that. It's really good that you have that.
Yeah, we're very grateful. And I think part of the reason that we're able to benefit from that support system is because we're open and honest with them. Some people have no support system, and then other people have a support system, but they don't want to share what's going on. And a lot of women, especially when they're going through, when they're pregnant and it's early on, because we were having this happen around 6 weeks, 7 weeks. A lot of women won't even say they're pregnant until 12 weeks or past that. So we had to make the decision to open up and share with people what was going on with a select group of people. We didn't tell everybody. We told a select group. I have a Facebook group that it's a private group, and it's a bunch of my friends that are from across the country who are prayer warriors. I call it my Covenant Friends group, and so I put it in that group, and then when the baby passed, we told everybody, because I wanted to honor the life of the child. But still, I think my encouragement would be to people who are watching, it would be to find trusted people. If you don't have trusted people, there's always licensed counselors, therapists, ministers that you can go to. Even if you don't know them, you can still go to them and talk to them and find them and pray with them. But it is important just for your own mental health to have people.
Very, very, very important. One particular question I wanted to ask you. I know Sean has a daughter, and how does it feel for you knowing that you became one?
Yes.
When you got married. But as a human being, you still want that my biological child.
Oh, absolutely.
How does it feel for you sometimes knowing that Sean has one and least, and you have not.
Yeah, it's it's interesting. It's complicated. Sometimes I'm really grateful because I feel less guilt. Not that you shouldn't feel guilty, but unfortunately, when you're struggling with infertility or having a child, you do feel guilty. You feel guilty that you can't give someone what you want them to have, because before we even got married.
Why is it always the women feeling that way? Like, I can have children, baby girl, I can have a baby boy, I couldn't give you, and we tend to say, oh, I couldn't give my husband.
Yeah, I think it's because, well, honestly, I think it's whoever assumes that they're the problem, because I did read a book about infertility, and it was a man who wrote the book, and he was the one the doctor said that he could not have children.
Okay.
And he felt the guilt because he knew. I think women in general maybe tend to feel more guilty anyway about things, but for me, it's because I assume the problem's with me, because he's already had a child, and so the doctors have said most likely the problem's not with him, and I have the medical history of endometriosis, so I know it's most likely my body that's not operating in the way that it should. But a lot of times I feel grateful that he has a daughter, because it just makes it, obviously she's a wonderful person, and so it makes us have a family, but even for like Mother's Day and Father's Day and everything, I'm always feeling a little sad. I'm sure he feels a little sad too, but I think it would be even worse if he didn't have any children in the house. And so I'm really grateful for that. Although, of course, it takes time, and it took time for me to adjust and to be able to truly appreciate, a blended family. Every blended family has ups and downs and hardships and everything as well. And yeah, you still, I think always want, especially like right now at my church, a lot of people are pregnant. I think there's like 4 girls that are pregnant. My pastor recently announced, so many people are pregnant here. And so you always feel that ache of I wish that I could have my own biological child, going on Facebook, going on Instagram, seeing everyone's pictures. It's difficult. But
and I remember I was pregnant when we first met.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know there was anything like that going on.
Yeah, because I don't always talk about it.
Yeah, I remember I texted you, hey, I was telling you I'm gonna be late because I'm this pregnant woman, and I didn't even I remember saying that. She was like, oh, congratulations, and then I got to know you and meet you, and then you told me all this. I'm like, oh my God, I felt like really bad, but then you were handling it well.
Yeah,
and
at
that time you hadn't had the surgery. I can't remember if you had the surgery at that time.
I don't remember if I did either when we met. But I have a lot of grace. And like I said, I worked for 4 years with pregnant women. So for 4 years, I was working with women who were like, not only saying they were pregnant, but again, saying they were pregnant and they weren't going to keep the baby. So I God's given me a lot of grace through prayer. And I am genuinely happy for people. Not all of the time. There's times where I'm like,
you're a human.
I'm a human, and I feel like, oh man, what about me? But I still, there's a little baby girl at our church, Aria, who I love to hold all the time. She's so cute. And, I get to enjoy other people's, children. And suffering is part of the life of a Christian, and it looks different for every person. Some people, they're born with disabilities, or, they struggle maybe with their, school and education, or maybe they find themselves in a marriage and the marriage has hardships, or maybe their husband or wife passes away.
Yes.
I have friends who've lost children. Obviously we lost a child through miscarriage. I have friends who have lost children who were infants and toddlers. I have a friend that lost 2 children in a fire. Her children were 3 and 4. I have another girlfriend who lost 3 children, 2 at birth. She birthed 2 children, they passed away in the hospital, and the 3rd passed away 6 months later. And so, I've looked, if you're comparing yourself, there's always people who seem to have it easier than you, and there's always people who seem to have it harder than you, depending on who you're looking at. But I like the scripture in the Bible where it says, the boundary lines have fallen to me in pleasant places. Indeed, I have a good inheritance. It's like God is the one who decides just how much sorrow is going to be in your life, just how much joy, and what that's going to look like, and what particular challenges you're going to have. And so, again, it comes down to just trusting Him through that process. And I did that before I got married. And I was waiting a long time. I wasn't sure if I'd ever get married. And I was praying and waiting, and I was looking at everybody else who seemed to, in their 20s, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, they're getting married and I'm waiting. And I just had to believe for God, and it's the same thing now. And then, if we do eventually have a child, whether through biological child or through adoption, we'll be waiting for something else. We're always waiting, and there's always, safety in these different things that we have, like, they're kind of an illusion, ultimately God keeps us safe and secure, but every person, whether you're a woman that struggled with infertility or whether you're a mom, you're still going to have these same things you have to wrestle through.
Yes.
Because there's no guarantee that any of our children will outlive us, or so that's how I think about it sometimes.
I mean, I understand what you say. I talk about that too, and I think about it, but all I know that we can do is to pray and trust God.
That's all we can do, period.
Like, you gave me this child, I don't know how long he's going to live for, but I'm trusting you that he's going to live till he's old and gray, and that's the only thing I can do. We can only pray and just believe, because if we don't, we're going to continue to live in fear.
Exactly, and that's no way to live. No way to live. So it's all, no matter your circumstance, it's all, if you're a Christian, it's all about trusting God and His perfect leadership for your life, and knowing that He knows best. We did genetic testing for the baby, and we realized the baby had way too many chromosomes, and so if it had lived, the baby would have been like severely probably deformed, and most likely would have died at birth, if not, maybe a couple months after that. Now, of course, God can do anything. So God could have come in and healed the baby. God could do anything. But again, it's like, there's a reason that He's God and we're not.
Yes.
He's sovereign and He knows what's best for us. And but we do believe in heaven, of course. So we do believe that we have a child in heaven, that we'll see that child one day. And so that's kind of a hope, a hopeful thought that I like to think about from time to time.
Awesome. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Well, Sean, do you feel guilty sometimes that you have your daughter in Christiana, you see her struggling and going through all of this, and she still hasn't had one from both of you?
Sometimes, just, again, it's like, I think men oftentimes feel like we're the providers of everything. There's no limit really to that provision thing. It's like, we're always trying to figure out how to meet the need, no matter what the need is. And so, it just, that's what it feels like. It feels like, okay, how do I meet this need? And the guilt comes when you can't, no matter what it is. There's times where there are other things that, I feel like, well, man, I need to be able to help, like she'll have an idea or something that she wants to do in her life, and it's like, okay, I want to help you with that. Or, having children, you would think that one should be a little bit less challenging, it's like, all right, but then, okay, something that seems like she said, like, it should be simple, and you see, everybody around you, I mean, even to the point where, pastors making references like, if you come to this church and drink the water, you get pregnant, and you hear these things and you're like, well, not in my house. That water, we must not be tapped into that well or whatever, we must be on city water or something. I don't know. So it's just like, in those situations, in those moments, or, we get, because we're the young adult ministers, I think at any given time in our house, there may be 2 or 3 pregnant women in there, and it seems like every other week somebody comes in and says, I'm pregnant, and it's just like, so it becomes very, because you want to be genuinely grateful for them and their situation, but at the same time I'm feeling like, wow, I know my wife would want to come in here and then make that announcement, so yeah, it is very challenging a lot of times, actually.
I can't imagine that, but God's grace is with you both. So.
He is, and I think that's the challenge of, you could save yourself that pain by avoiding community, but then you lose something by doing that as well. So that's the tension,
Yeah.
is that if you're in community, if you're in church, you're going to have all those experiences, and you kind of isolate yourself, but then you miss out on, you miss out on other things. Now, I will say though, it's okay for women if they're infertile and they're in pain. They don't have to, like for instance, if there's a big Mother's Day celebration at their church, you can stay home on Mother's Day if you want to. I even had a friend who recently lost her mom. Her mom passed away, and she stayed home on Mother's Day, and that's okay. Like, God's not gonna hold that against you. You don't always have to be so strong. It's okay to say, and there's been times where I've said that, like, I'm not going to go to this particular service because it's too difficult.
Yeah.
And then other times when you feel like, okay, I feel the grace. I mean, there's times where Pastor Paul has, called everybody up to the altar to pray for mothers. And I am a stepmom and a spiritual mom to people. So there's times where I'm like, okay, I'm going up there. And there's other times where I'm like, I don't want to go up there, I'm not a mom. You have to wrestle with that. And then usually, almost always in those times, somebody from church is going to be like, God told me you're a mom, he wants you to come up there. And I'm like, oh God, leave me alone. And so, you just have all these different emotions. But one of the greatest things about the Lord in the Bible is that if you look at the scriptures, people are very honest with God. You look at Job and he's like, oh Lord, like you look at Jonah and he's like, God, why did you make me come over here to these people? I just want to die, like curse the day I was born. And you look at people in the Bible that were barren, like Rachel and Hannah, and they're just like, her husband, I think it was Rachel's husband, or Hannah's husband, one of their husbands. Aren't I better to you than 10 sons? No, I want to have children.
Yeah.
So God's always welcomed his people to be very honest, and you see lots of examples in the scriptures where they're very honest, and so I like that because it makes me feel like, I don't have to pretend that everything's okay. I can be emotional. Not that I can live in that place, because you can't function in like being emotional all the time. You need to be able to have your emotions under the control of the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
But there's room to grieve. There's room to cry. There's room to mourn. There's room to laugh. There's room to, grief. I think we have a misunderstanding of what grief looks like in society. Sometimes people will say, time heals all wounds, or things like that, or they'll say, you should be better by now, or, well, it was just, a miscarriage, so, I'm sure it's not going to take a long time to recover, or whatever people think of, but grief looks different for every person.
It is.
And it's very different, and so you have to go to God with your grief and know that it's okay. There's some people who have miscarriages and they will cry for like every single day for months. Like, I know people who cried every single day for months. And there's other people who will get up and go to work 2 days later and not want to process it in that way. And so it just looks different for every person.
Personally, I don't think time heals. I think God heals.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and I feel like people just find a new normal to live with whatever happened to them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
2 more questions I have before we end the session.
Sure. It's great questions.
Have you had outside tension from extended family? I know where I come from, it's very impossible that when you can't have children, you still have maybe your husband's mom or your mom or your cousin want to say something or cheapen something or give you advice or whatever. Have you ever had that struggle before?
Well, thankfully we, unfortunately America doesn't value children as much as they do in Africa.
I think some of my friends is the opposite. They're like, you should be done with thinking about kids. Like,
unfortunately we are not a nation that is as accepting. I mean, people love children in America, obviously, but a lot of people. There's this whole idea of like being child free, and there's a lot of Americans that are like, I'm child free, I don't want to ever have children, and then women are actually having children later and later in America because they're going to school and different things, which is it's good to go to school, but so there's a lot of women, especially black women, who might be in their late 30s and stuff, and they haven't had any children yet. So I guess in that way benefits us because we don't get a lot of pushback or questions.
Okay.
But I do, but what we do get, which was like annoying to me in the beginning, we don't get it as much anymore. Before people knew what was going on, we would always get the, when are you going to have children? Those kind of questions. Are you trying to have children? Now, people wouldn't say that now because they know.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, I would just say, you know, oh, God's timing. But then once I realized what was going on with me and I was getting frustrated, sometimes I would say things like, well, it's kind of mean, but sometimes I would just be like, you know, we're struggling to have children, but you can pray for us. Or I would kind of just like, you know, give them the weight of the situation, which makes the person feel awkward. And it's like, oh, I'm sorry I said that. I don't really do that anymore because it doesn't, because again, the benefit of being vulnerable, in a sense, it's hard to be vulnerable, but when you are vulnerable, more people know what's going on. And so because they know what's going on, unless they're a complete stranger, they're going to be, you know, cautious and sensitive when they talk to you about things. And so that's been helpful. And we have a lot of people that just have gone through similar things that I know. I've had friends who have, you know, gone through this, had surgeries, adopted children, different things. And so I always look to them as an example as well. Even my former boss, where I worked for the pregnancy center for 4 years, she's been infertile now for 8 years, and unexplained infertility. Like 40% of infertility is unexplained. The doctor can't tell you why. And she's on her second adoption right now. She adopted a baby boy who's 2 years old now, maybe actually a little older, and then she has a little girl that she's in the process of adopting. And so I think God really put her there for a reason. I had another boss when I started, but that boss left, and then she came in. And I just know it was divine that the Lord used her in that way, because we're, you know, looking into adoption as well. We're starting the process of it. So and I've really been kind of looking to her as the main example. I'm doing it the same way that she did it, which is through the state.
So medically, you guys cannot have kids?
Well, you know,
cannot have kids?
They've never told us that.
Okay.
So, so we could have children.
Okay.
It just hasn't happened yet. And that's the thing about infertility. You know, thankfully, there's some people who the doctors will say, this is what's going on, because of this you can't have children. For me, they don't know what's going on. So it's a question.
Oh, God knows.
Yeah, so only God knows. So we could, I mean, the fact that I got pregnant shows that I could have children.
Right.
But, you know, but so far it hasn't been able to happen, and I wasn't able to, you know, continue the pregnancy. Now, it's been like a year or so after that. Pregnancy, we haven't got pregnant yet. But again, it could happen. So we just wait and see. But as we're waiting, we're pursuing adoption as we're waiting, because we've always wanted to do both those things anyway.
So I know stress can either make you grow closer with your spouse, and some other people have it the other way, like we're growing apart.
Yeah.
So for you, what would you say it's been, as this brought you together more, or you've experienced a time where you guys are just like, we're not feeling each other? Sean?
Go ahead. Sean's like, I'm not feeling it. No.
Yeah.
Sometimes isn't, but
I don't know. I think, you know, being someone who's accustomed to struggle, you know, and growing up in a household with, you know, two parents that were married for 47 years. You know, my brother's also 15 years older than me. He's been married since I was like 7 or 8 years old. I don't, so early I don't remember. So watching the struggle in the family is normal, very normal. And to me, you pick a thing. You know, this is our struggle, but you know, I watched my parents walk through different struggles, and what I saw was, okay, this is just normal. So there is no, well, that makes us go this way. I mean, it's like this is just part of what happens. And so, for me, I mean, you know, this is just an extension of, you know, a life that started when I was born, and now I have somebody to help me when I go through the struggle. The struggle didn't come because I got married.
Yes.
You know, and struggle didn't come for her because she married me.
That's beautiful that you know that and you can actually say that, because a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
I've heard people make comment like, my life has been miserable since you came in. Go ahead. I know you're different
Yeah.
situations and you have people who come into your life and they clearly are doing you evil.
Yeah.
You know, but it's good that you know that it's teamwork. It speaks love, it speaks acceptance, it just speaks that you know the heart of God towards you, and you might not know it right now exactly why you're going through whatever you're going through, but it's beautiful that you know that.
Amen. Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely think that, struggle does help draw you closer because, you're praying together about the situation. You get to see the person's character. What happens when, I have to go through surgery? Are you going to freak out, or are you going to be calm and steady, Are you going to help take care of me? Which, he did, like after my surgery, help take care of me. There's different times that we both get down, but, we can encourage each other. And even before this, we went through different things, like, Sean had a job loss, and, we've had different things we went through, and I think we've both risen to the occasion.
Okay.
Neither one of us has said, oh, throw in the towel and just sit on the floor and mourn. We both have had maybe emotional moments, but we both have pushed each other to seek God. I mean, for me, and I'm sure Sean knows this, like, I only have one answer, which is Jesus. So whenever anything's going wrong, I think we just gotta pray, That's like my number one answer. Something's happening at work, I tell Sean, you gotta pray. Like, because that's all I know to do. And God always comes through.
With you.
Yeah.
That's good.
So I think we've definitely been strengthened through it. And it's exciting though to think that the way that life works, that even this interview, we can look back at this interview, and 2 years from now, 5 years from now, our situation could be completely
a different story. I would be excited.
Yeah.
And I would have you back here.
Yes, we'd love to come back. Yeah. But it's good to record this moment, because so often like the Bible says, when a woman's in labor, she has the baby, and then she forgets the pain of the labor because the joy of the child has come.
So true.
Same thing with marriage. I was single for a long time, lots of tears, lots of crying, lots of pressing, lots of fasting and praying. Then you get married, and you forget what it was like to be single. I mean, you remember, but the pain, it's gone. And so,
it's more like you have a greater joy than the pain that you went through.
You'll be very grateful, and I know when we are able to expand our family, whatever that looks like, we'll be very grateful, and we won't take it for granted because we'll know what we walked through.
Yeah. So has this affected your faith in any way? Maybe when you just started going through it, or later in the middle, did this ever affect your faith in God in any way?
Well, I've tried to not get offended with God over the years. I think that one of the main ways that people lose their faith is getting offended at God. That little accusing voice from the enemy that says, God doesn't really love you. God's not good. God doesn't care about you. And then you start believing it, and then you start thinking, God, you don't care about me. You start accusing God. You become like Satan, and you become the accuser towards God. And so I've tried to be careful of that over the last 10 years, however many years I've been walking with the Lord, more than 10 years, but since I was 12, but when I was 18, 19 was when I really started understanding God more. What I will say is there's always moments. There's always a moment where you get frustrated or angry at God, and you do point your little finger and say, God, why, or how come I'm going through this, or you're not loving me right now, or I'm feeling bad. But God always comes through in those moments. Like, God always encourages me. One that I can think of that I'll share with you in particular, I knew I was going to have a miscarriage, and the doctors told me I was, but I still had a speaking engagement, and it was in Michigan. And so I didn't want to cancel, so I said, I'm just going to go. And I was just praying that I wouldn't have a miscarriage on the plane. Now, if I knew how painful my miscarriage was going to be, maybe I would have been more likely to stay home. Because when it actually happened, I couldn't have been on the plane, or I would have been in the emergency room. But anyway, I went, and God was with me through the process. I didn't have a miscarriage, on the plane or anything, or at the hotel or when I was speaking. But on the way back to in the airport, on the way back, I was just so angry. I was just so angry that I was going through this situation. I finished speaking and everything went well and I was heading home, but I was just starting to just complain and get bitter and just talk to God. I mean, it was really just 40 minutes of this happening, so it wasn't this drawn out thing, but it was real. I could feel the wrestle in my heart, and I was starting to just, accuse God. And then I ran into my favorite worship leader, Jason Upton. He's a guy that his music got me all through college. I would just sit in my dorm room and listen to his worship music, and I ran into him at the airport, and I literally said to him, oh my gosh, this is God. I was just feeling, I told him I was feeling so frustrated about this. The doctor told me, this, and he was let me pray for you. And so he prayed for me, and it was really, I think I was mad at Sean about something, we were mad at each other because he didn't even fully rejoice in that moment with me because I think I yelled at him about something. I can't remember what it was. Something was happening. But God met me in that moment. And so it's really more of a testament to God than it is even to me. It's just that every time I start to get, God just comes in and it's nope, I'm going to remind you how much I love you. Nope, I'm going to remind you that I've got you in the palm of my hand. Now, I could, of course, push the Lord away. I could say, no, I don't believe that. But I don't. I don't do that because I know God's good. I mean, we've had a long relationship. So, it's with my husband. He may do something, and he does. And I, to him, there's something that can happen, and you're well, I'm mad at this person for this moment. But then the character of the person, and you're okay, would my husband really want to hurt me? He may have said this word to me, and I'm angry at him, but his character is never to really hurt me. His character is that he loves me. I know his character. And so when we start to feel those emotions rise up and the accusations come, we always have to remember the character of God. Who is God? And I have a long history. I mean, God, saved my life when I was in my mother's womb.
Yes.
He gave her the strength to walk out of the abortion appointment. So I can start all the way from there and go throughout my entire life. And that's why the Lord would always say to people, have memorial stones and write down what happened and write down the victory and remember. Because when you're starting to feel bad about something, you have to look at your history with God and remember, God came through here and here and here and here and here. And as you recount that history, the accusations start to be silenced and you remember how good God is. And you say, well, if he got me through all this, he'll continue to carry me. So, yeah, I've had little moments, but nothing that's caused me to turn from the Lord in any way. And
Awesome.
same thing for you, I think, right?
Awesome.
Yeah, I think if anything, it increases our faith. I think my mom was 38 when she had me, and she was told that she wasn't going to be able to have. After my oldest brother, my mom was told she wouldn't be able to have any more kids, and then 2 of us were born. Even though I'm 15 years later, I wasn't supposed to be born. So, I know that God does what God wants to do.
Yes.
God, He doesn't need any help from us at all. He's the only creator. We don't create any of this stuff. It was all put here by God. We make things out of things God created, but we can't create anything. We don't produce iron ore from the earth. We don't produce wood from trees. We just take what God gives us.
Sure.
So everything that we need has already been put here from day one.
Preach,
and then we just
preach.
put it together.
I'm
And
loving
so in the same way with us human beings, God created us all, and for us to make a baby is we have very little role in it.
Yes.
And I think a lot of times we love to see miracles. We love to hear about miracles, but it's very difficult to be one. I don't want to be the guy that gets cured from cancer. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the guy that gets raised from the dead by Jesus. I don't want to be that person. I was I'd love to see it.
Love to see it.
That's what I mean. It's that. So in order to be the couple that struggled to have a baby and was told that they couldn't and all that, and then God did it, we have to be that couple.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And sometimes when you're a servant of the Lord, you don't choose what it is that God's going to use you to do to show someone else or to be who He is, or that's the beauty, and sometimes that's also the frustration of being a servant of the Lord. It's like you say yes when you sing all these songs, I surrender, or Lord, use me, or send me, I'll go, or give myself away, like all that stuff. I probably declared everything that's happening. I declared it in a prayer room or in a prayer meeting somewhere, and God's saying, hey, you told me, have your way. You told me, I'll send me, I'll go. You told me if you need somebody to use me. You told me all that, and I'm using your life. I'm getting every ounce I can get out of you because you said yes. And so sometimes it looks like this, and I don't even think in the grand scheme of things, because when you look around at the world, you see so much more. It's like in the grand scheme of things, it's like, man, I don't know that I'm doing my part. I'm not asking the Lord, hey, find other ways to show how to how to make. I'm not asking for that. I'm not at home. I tell the Lord sometimes, Lord, okay, I don't need this to be that miracle healing thing. I don't need for you to manifest that in me. I believe you can do it. I don't need you to show me. But it's like, okay, but we're in this situation, and I believe God can do it, and I believe God will get the glory. I believe God will do exactly what He wants to do and get glory out of our life.
Powerful. This has been very eye-opening, and I have tried not to get emotional, but it's been very, very powerful, and again, I'm so humbled to have had this moment with both of you.
Oh, thank you.
What would you say, what would be your advice to people going through this? People, especially those people that don't have anyone to share with, or to talk to, or to relate with, and this is you going through it. This is the first-hand information they can get, because I can't give them that information. I don't know what it is. I can only imagine what it is. But this is you going through it. What would you say to them?
Well, I would say, and I'll just look at the camera, I would say first, you want to make sure you're doing everything that you know that you can do. Now, it's difficult when it comes to doctors, and because that can be expensive. But at least start with the things that you know you can do, like exercise. So make sure that you are exercising, make sure that you're eating relatively well, because sometimes those things can be, blockages for you to get pregnant. And if you've done all those basic things, you're taking care of yourself, stop smoking, don't drink, obviously not taking any drugs or things like that, and even being careful with like caffeine and how much you consume. But if you're mindful of that, then it is good to see a doctor. And of course, some doctors are more expensive, but even if you start with like a general practitioner, or even a walk-in clinic, there's a lot of articles online. You can look up infertility, or you can Google just trying to get pregnant, and there's tons and tons of resources. Now you have to be careful not to be overwhelmed by all those resources, but there are lots of support groups online. There's Facebook groups, there's Instagram groups, and so even if you don't have friends in your area, you can talk to people on the internet and connect with them. There's conferences, there's events, there's seminars, there's books. You can go on Amazon. There's a lot of resources that are at your fingertips to help you walk through this. And so I would say, do your research. I'm a big researcher. It's so important to do your research. Do your research to understand what's going on, and then who's out there to help you. And then I would say just take it one step at a time. I think one of the hardest things about dealing with infertility is that you don't know what step to take, and there's so many avenues, and everyone's going to tell you something different. Someone's going to say, oh, have you tried the Creighton model? And then someone's going to say, oh, have you tried IVF? And then someone's going to say, oh, have you tried this or that? And you have to know what you're okay with and not okay with. So for us personally, IVF is something that we don't feel comfortable doing or want to do. So we said, no, that's not something we're going to do. For other people, they do that, and that can work for them. And then there's people who will use different natural family planning methods, or doctors that they'll go to, and that'll help them. So you can look at all the options and then just decide where you want to start, and what you want to do. And also remember that, as you mentioned before, adoption is also an option to building your family. It doesn't take away from the pain or of being infertile, but it's an option that sometimes people. And yes, private adoption is very expensive. It can be very expensive, but anyone can adopt for free through the state, through the Department of Children and Families, or whatever state you're in. You can adopt, and it's a process, of course, and you're taking in children that have had trauma, and oftentimes you're fostering them before you're able to adopt them. But depending on what state you're in, a lot of states will help you with medical costs, and they'll help you with college and different things. And so there's a lot that's out there. And if anyone wants to connect with me, my website is ChristinaBennett.com, ChristianaBennett, ChristinaBennett.com. My contact information's on there, and so if anyone has any personal questions, you can ask me then.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Sean, do you have any other things to say?
Just make sure you talk to each other about it. Especially men, it can be tough to just have the conversation, with your spouse, just to listen, just to be open with the struggle, because we men and women process struggles differently. And so one of the things I know as a man that I do is I try to go somewhere and fix it, or I just try to take care of things on my own. But a lot of times what my wife needs is just for me to listen, just to have her process it out loud, talk through things, hear her out. So I just encourage you to talk to each other through the process.
Thank you. Good word. Good word. And even though I haven't struggled with this, one thing I can tell you is to always pray.
Yep.
God listens. He knows even before you started your struggles. He knows. He understands more than you do, and He knows the next step that you can take. Well, it's been a very, very mind-blowing interview. Again, I am so thankful that you made time to come.
Of course.
Well, you had it all. I hope you were blessed by this. Until next time, stay blessed and still hopeful. Bless you.